Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kortiwada. In this video, we will learn about React Redux along with Thunk. I have explained the basic concepts of React Redux in my previous video of React tutorials. Please watch that for better understanding. We will be covering the React Redux concept and then we'll move on to the Thunk. So in this video, we will focus on what is Redux Thunk, and also we will focus on what we are implementing in this particular video. So let me go to the next slide. Here we'll learn what is Redux Thunk. So why we are using Redux Thunk. In general, whenever you want to dispatch something, you need to dispatch only an object. But if you want to do some logic in the middle before reaching your reducer or before dispatching your original object, then you can use Redux Thunk. Redux Thunk will act as a middleware and it helps us to handle the asynchronous calls such as API calls. And Redux Thunk is a middleware for store which provides the capability to handle the functions which can dispatch other actions. That means a Thunk will help us to dispatch a function which receives the dispatch as a property, and this dispatch can execute all the other dispatches. So that is what the Redux Thunk, and we will see all this experimentally and what we are focusing in this video. So topics which we will cover in this video is installing and configuring Thunk in the React application, creating the reducers which handles the loading, API data and error handling, and also dispatching the actions from the UI and rendering the updated content from the reducer states in the UI. So these are the three things which majorly focus in this video. So let me quickly jump into the Visual Studio Code and install all the respective things which are required for us. So let me go to the Visual Studio Code, and here let me go into the next terminal and let me zoom it a bit. npm install react-redux. So this will help us for communicating React and Redux, and also we need to have a capability to use Redux, and then I'll use something called as Redux-Thunk, and let me hit enter. This will install three packages, and let's go into our package JSON, control P or command P, and let's see package JSON. Here you can see Redux. So it has installed React Redux and Redux Thunk. So let me save this. And now our responsibility is to create the components first. So let me go into the folder structure, and here let me create something called as a new folder, and here I want to create a folder called as pages. And inside these pages I want to create one folder called as list, and inside this list I'll create a file called as list.tsx, and let me hit enter. Now I'll use a snippet called as rfce and tab, so it is created with a list functional component. And now, as we know, we will be focusing on reducers and also connect. So what I'll do is just I'll create a new folder called as Redux, and inside this folder I'll be creating a new folder called as list, and inside this list I'll create a new file called as list.reducer.ts. This is one file, and let me create one more file called as list.state.ts, which will be having an initial state of our application, and let me create a new file called as list.action.types.ts. This will have all the types. Now what I'll do is I'll go into the list reducer and I'll create my reducer first. So const, and let me export this list reducer. As we know, any reducer function will receive two parameters. One is the state parameter, let it be any as of now, and I'll use something called as actions parameter, which is again an any. So before going further, I'll do a export with interface. I just want to create an interface for our I actions. That means this will be a generic interface, and this will have a type which is having a string, and then I'll go with a payload which is something like an optional parameter for this action, and then I'll use any for this. So let me save this. Now we have this list reducer. This reducer will be having this type of actions, So let me use this type of actions, and now I'll use a switch case where actions.type will give you one type which is dispatched by the user or the component. And now whatever it is dispatched, let me map it with a case. That case, let's decide that in our types. So export const list underscore actions, and I want to create some actions for this. One is the request action, and let me use this as request, and I can make it something like non-string. It's a property, and now this property is having a request, and then I'll go with success, because as we are focusing on the API call, I will have a request phase and a success phase or a failure phase. So let me use all of them. Success, and then I'll go with a failure case. Failure case, and this is something called as a failure. Let me use failure. And now our actions are ready. Let me frame that actions here. So what is my actions? List actions dot request. Whenever the request happens, we need to return a state. And what is that state and what we will return, we'll see a bit later. Let me focus on the cases. List actions dot success. Whenever it is success, what should be written, we'll focus later. And also let me create one more case which is a failure case. So let me use a failure case, and here we will return something whenever it is failed, and by default we will return only the state. That is nothing but your original state. Return a state with dot 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 state, and let me put this colon here, and let me save this. Our reducer is ready with the logic. And what is our state? Now our state will contain some set of values. Before going further, I want to create the state interface. Export interface, and this is something called as list, or let me use I. List I indicates an interface, and this interface will have a loading phase which is by default a boolean value, and also will be getting a data. This is something like an array of values, that means any as an array or null value. I can pass a null as well, and we will be having a error phase where it will be a string, where we will be passing the error as a string message. Let me save this. Now this interface will be pointing to my reducer here, and let me create an initial state for this. So what is the initial state? Export const init or initial list state, which is equivalent to my loading, or which is of type something like I list, and inside this I'll use control space. We'll be getting a data which is null by default, and let me use a loading which is again a false by default, and we'll be having an error that is an empty string, or you can use just null here also. And to pass that null, let me change this type to string or null. Let me save this. Now we are ready with the initial list state. Let me copy this initial list state and pass it to the state. If nothing is passed for our state, it will take this initial value. Let me save this. Now we got the state, and whenever there is a request happening, my state will have dot dot state comma I want to override my loading property with true, because whenever it is in the request phase, I should show a loading indicator based on this boolean value. Now whenever it is success, you will be getting some set of state value where the data will be pointing to your payload. So let me use actions.payload. So whatever the payload we are receiving, I am passing it to the data, and whenever it is success, I need to stop my loading if it is already in loading phase. That means false. If it is already true, I am making it as false. And the same strategy here, but this time whenever it fails, my data should be null and my loading should be false, and then I need to have an error message. Whenever there is an error, I want to pass it from my actions.payload. So let me save this. And till now it is clear, and let me format this and save this. Now you are ready with your reducer, state and actions. So even if you want to create your action creators, it's up to you. We can create the action creators and we can just dispatch that actions. But as of now, we are using only actions. Just I'll try to create my service layer. So Till here we are ready with the reducer. Let me close this, and we are ready with the reducer, and then go with the new folder called as store. I want to create a store folder, and inside the store let me create one file called as store.ts. And inside this store.ts I just want to create my store. How to create the store? Use create store, and this will be coming from Redux. And let me give a semicolon here, and let me use a export here, export const redux, or let me use a store variable here, and this will require one reducer. So what is my reducer here? I can use either direct reducer, which is pointing to our list reducer, or else in the future we may be having n number of reducers. To fetch all that reducers and put it together, we have something called as combined reducer. So this combined reducer will take an object, and inside this object I can use a list reducer, which is our reducer, and which is pointing to list reducer, which is coming from your reducer file. This will return you one instance. Let me hold on for that instance, combined reducer, or you can use root reducers, anything is fine. And let me pass this combined reducer here, and let me save this. Till here we are clear with the storage, and now the store should be linked up with our app component. How it will be linking with our React application? By using index.tsx. Inside the index.tsx you can use something called as provider. So this provider is coming from React Redux, and this will have a prop called as store, and this store will receive our store variable, which is just created. And let me save this. You can see here, this is the store variable which we are assigning to our provider, and this provider should be ended up with app component. And let me format this. So all the components which are under this app can use this store data. So let me save this, and we are done with the configuration of store. And now let me go into the pages, and let me go into the list. Here the list is created. Now what we need to do, we have to connect our reducer logic with our component. So how can we do that? By using connect. Let me go with connect folder. I have discussed about the connect in my previous video. Please watch that for better understanding. I'll try to explain here as well, but try to see that where you can get more understanding of using connect. List.connect.tsx, or you can use ts, and inside this I just want to export default, and let me use a connect, and you can get it from React Redux. This will receive two objects. One is const map state to props, which is a function, and this will receive the current state. Let me use a state of any, and then let me use one more thing called as map dispatch to props, and this will have one parameter, and that parameter is equivalent to your dispatch. And that, let me use any, and now this dispatch will be the second parameter, and state will be the first parameter of the connect. So copy and paste, and comma dispatch, just copy it and paste here, and this will be connected to one of the component. That component is nothing but the list component. So let me use this list from the component, which is from pages, and save this. Now this has to return something, so let me use a return with an object, and here let me use return with an object. Save this. Now let me format this. Now let's understand what this mapStateToProps will do. mapStateToProps will receive the data, that is updated state value, from the reducer, and it will return a transformed props to your list component. So let me minimize this, and you can pass it to the list component, and this props will also be passed to your list, but these are mainly used for dispatching. That means whenever you have an action to dispatch from the list, then these props can be used. So for that sake, I'll use only one prop here, that is nothing but get data, which is a method, and this method will return you the value or the function which can be dispatched. So let me dispatch with a type of an object, and this object will have a type, and that type is equal to list actions dot request. Anything, just anything we can pass. And here what I will do is I'll just return the loading indicator, and that will be equivalent to my state dot list reducer dot loading, and data, which is again from state dot list reducer dot data, and error, that is also from state dot list reducer dot error. So these are the three values which I am passing to my component, that is list component. So let me go into the list component and let me receive all these props. So props, and this time I'll be receiving any. After that we'll write an interface for this as well. So now let me use a console here, console.log of props, and let me save this. Now let me inject our component. So let me go to app.tsx. So let me remove all this header part from here and just use that connect. That is nothing but list connect. So list connect, what it will do is it will help us to connect our UI and reducer logic together, and this will receive the props. That props are already passed to my list component. You can see here. Let me go to the browser and let me show you it is compiled successfully. Let me go to the browser, and here we are able to see the list, and if you inspect you can see we have data, error, get data, and loading. So now what I want to do is I want to create one particular button here to get the list of data from your API call. So for that sake, let me use a button here, button, and this one get remote data, and let me use a button here, that is nothing but on click is equal to, let me use this arrow function and let me call props dot get data function, which is coming from your props, which is coming from your connect. So let me go to the connect will send this get data, and I am trying to call that get data on a button click. Let me save this button click, whenever it happens it will call the get data, and get data will dispatch an object that is nothing but your request, and whenever this request is triggered it will go into your reducer, list reducer, and this list reducer will match with this action, and this state will return a boolean value called as loading as true, and that loading as true it will pass again back to the connect. Here the state has been changed and remaining things will be passed as a default value, that is nothing but null, as well as data is also null, but loading will be changed into true. So let me go here and let me reload and show you what is this loading value. Loading value is false both the times, and when I click on get remote data, then your loading became true. You can see here the loading is true. So that action is getting dispatched. But here we are dispatching a direct action, but I don't want to do that. When I want to call this request or success or failure, whenever there is an API call triggered, then I have to call the request, and this request should be in a hold or in a pending state until I get a response from the API. That means a failure or a success response. So let me create one function here. Let me go here and create a function called as const get API call, and this is a function again. And now let me use something like Axios. So let me go and install Axios in this npm install Axios and hit enter. It will install the Axios for us. And now what I want to do is I want to do a API call here. So let me go and do that API call, Axios dot get. Whenever this URL will be triggered, then we need to get the data. For that sake, let me go into JSON placeholder, which is a fake API link. So let me use this to-dos list where you will be getting the list of data for you, and let me pass here and let me pass semicolon. This will be something like your axios.get, and it is a promise based. So for that sake, let me use dot then, and you will be getting a result here. And whenever you get the result, you will be dispatching an action that is nothing but success action. Before going further, I want to write a console.log of result. Before dispatching anything, just I want to write this console. Let me save this, and now instead of dispatching this, I want to dispatch this only once the API is triggered. For hitting that API, I need to use get API call method. So whenever I call this method, it has to dispatch this method and it should come inside this. Let me use console.log of inside API call, and let me save this. So go to the browser and go to the React. Let Let me clear it off, and when I click on the get remote data, see here, you will be getting a clear understanding of your problem. Actions must be a plain objects. Instead, the actual type was undefined. You may need to add a middleware to your store setup to handle dispatching other values such as Redux Thunk. So what it is giving you the information is actions can only trigger or dispatch a plain object, but what we are doing here, we are trying to dispatch a API call, and that API call is nothing but your function. So till here it is very clear, but the problem is we should be able to use this dispatch inside this function. If you go inside this function and you need to dispatch here, that means whenever we want to have a dispatch inside another function, then how to do that? That can be possible only by using your Redux Thunk. So already we have installed Redux Thunk, but we have to map this with our store. So let me go to store.ts, and here let me use a middleware. For that sake, I'll pass one more parameter called as apply middleware, and this middleware will help us to have the capabilities or to provide the capabilities to our store with this particular middlewares. So I'll use a Thunk middleware which is coming from your Redux Thunk. Now our application will have the capability to use this middlewares, and whenever you are using a middleware, I can return one another function inside this function, that is nothing but return, and let me return a function, and in this return I can capture the dispatch. Who is passing this dispatch? Thunk is passing this dispatch. You will not pass any dispatch from anywhere, but whenever you are dispatching a method, that method will have the capability to capture this dispatch, and this dispatch will help us to execute or to dispatch some set of actions whenever it is required inside this function. So for that sake, whenever this API call triggers, then I can use this dispatch, and I can use like a plain object type, where this type points to list actions dot request. So whenever this get API call is triggered, this will be dispatching and your loading will start. Once the API is success, then I will be dispatching one more type, which is nothing but your list actions dot success. And also along with this, I need a payload for this. So let me use a payload, and this payload will be equivalent to your result. So this result, whatever the result I am getting from the API, I'm just passing into the reducer. So reducer will update the data inside the state. Now we have something called as catch block. So whenever there is an error happen to this, then I need to return something. So for that sake, I'll just use the catch block and dispatch the failure action. That is nothing but type colon list actions dot failure case, and this also requires a payload, but this time I'll pass a string. Something went wrong. Something went wrong is my string, and let me save this. So now whenever the user hits an API call, then first request will be calling where the loading will be true, and then it comes to the result phase, that is success phase, where the loading will be false, and you will be getting a data object here inside this particular list. Where we are writing all this, we are writing here. So you can see here the props. Let me clear it off, and when I hit this, first time the loading is true, and then we are getting a data inside this, and this data is passed to your original data here, but we don't want all this stuff. We want only the data which is showing 200 array values. That means just go to your API call which I wrote inside my connect, and here instead of passing my whole result, I'll pass only the data which is required for this result. Let me go back and clear it off. Let me click on this. First time loading is true, and later on the API call triggered in my connect, and then it is passing the data. The data is 200, array of 200 values, and loading is false and the error is null. And now what I'll do is I'll try to change this, and it will create a problem, so it has to dispatch something went wrong. Let me save this and go here, clear it off. Let me hit this. Now you will be getting a error here. So this time the loading is again false and data is null, but something went wrong is triggered. Why? Because we are facing 404, that is server issue, and it is going into the catch block. So for now we have triggered and we wrote all our consoles, but let me showcase the same thing in my UI. Let me go to the list and let me frame all the values here. So for that sake, let me use a div. Inside this div, what I'll do is I'll write some conditional renderings. So I'll use a props dot loading, or let me go to the connect and get the property from there. So it is loading. If it is still loading, then I have to return a paragraph where it is showing loading dot dot dot. And if it is not loading, then we have to check whether the props contains the data. If the data contains, then I have to return some method, or you can write just something like h1 data loaded just for now. And if this data does not exist, then I have to check props dot error. If error exists, then I have to show something called as a paragraph, and this paragraph is showing props dot, I can use a interpolation here, props dot error, and this error will be shown. If nothing is there, then we can show null. It is a bit confused as of now, but we'll make it as very clear. Format this, and if this condition is true, I want to return this. If not, I'll check for the data. If the data exists, then I'll return data, and if the data also does not exist, then I'll check for the error. So if error exists, then I'll return my error, else I'll return null. And let me see this. And what is the problem here? Expected flower base. Why we are expecting the flower base here? Here, let me save this. So when the loading happens, the loading will be passed, and when the data is loaded, data loaded will be shown, and when the error is in, then we will be getting the error. So let me go to the browser, and here you can see something went wrong. Let me reload this, and now let me hit on get remote data. You can focus on the empty space here. Click on this loading, something went wrong. Why? Because we have the problem in my URL. So let me make this API call a bit slow. So let me go to the slow mo, and let me first go into no throttling, and let me reload, and let me go into slow 3G. That means the API calls will go very slowly, and let me hit on get remote data. So now you are seeing loading because still it is pending, and once the data comes back, you are able to see something went wrong. But if I go here and go to my connect, and let me set this URL properly, save this and go here and clear it off. Let me reload, and now let me wait for some time because this loading is too slow. Let me go to no throttling, and once the application is loaded, let me go into slow mo. And now this slow 3G will reduce the speed of our network. So let me click on get remote data loading, and once it is success, then data loaded. But instead of data loaded, I need to show whole content here, whatever the content which we are receiving. For that sake, what I'll do is let me go into the list component, and instead of showing this h1, I'll just call get list, and I'll frame all my logic here. For the UI, let me copy this get list and const get list, and this list will return a UI. Return a UI. That UI will contain set of div, and inside this div I'll have a table, and inside this table I'll have t body, and above that we will be having t head, and inside this t head I'll be having tr, and inside this tr let me use t heading, and this t heading will be equivalent to the values which we are showcasing here. If you see, I want to showcase id, title and user id, so I'll showcase id. Let me copy this and paste here and paste here. Now let me go here and check this user id. So one is id, one is title, and one is something like completed. So let me use completed. Now let me create one tr, and this tr should be looped. Let me format this, and here the loop will be on my data. So props dot, I can use something like a flower base, props dot data dot map. So this has to be looped, and this map will receive one object of any, and let me implies and use something like a flower base and hit enter. and also let me close this and then close this. So now I want to return this whole tr. Cut this and then paste over here, but before pasting let me return the UI and format this. So this will be getting each and every object. Let me use a interpolation obj.id and let me use obj.title and then let me use obj.completed. What is that completed property? Here it is a completed property. Copy this and paste here and let me format this. Here let me use one key value. The key here is obj.id, which is unique. Let me save this. Now go back and clear it off. Go to the throttling and now let me use a reload and hit this. So you are getting this completed and you are getting that completed value, but it is true or false. That is the reason it is not rendering. So what I'll do is, if it is true, then I'll render something, and if it is false, something. So what is the something indicates is, I'll go with, whenever it is true I'll make it as active. If it is not true, then I'll make it as inactive. And let me save this. Here you can see inactive, inactive and active. But this is a clumsy data. Let's format this properly and remove this th. Instead of th I'll use td. Copy this, paste here, here, here and here. Let me save this. Now it is bit formal and the understandability is bit better, but we will be creating something like styles. So let me go into my app.css and here what I'll do is, just I'll write my queries table comma tr comma th comma td. I should have everything with a border 1 pixel solid and black. Let me save this. Now go here. So everything is in a table format. Now let's see. And when I go to slow 3G and let me go here and reload this, let me hit this loading and it is bit slow. Now we got the data and the data is rendered properly. So that is how we can get the data and render the data in the UI by using Thunk. So let me go and explain you in a clear fashion what we are doing. So here there is nothing very new. It is same like React Redux. We are creating a reducer. So what is the reducer here? List reducer, and this list reducer is connected to your list component by using list connect.ts, and this list connect.ts is having one dispatch, and that dispatch is responsible to call an API. That means asynchronous data. Whenever you want to handle some asynchronous data, one of the way to use your dispatch within another function, you can use Redux Thunk. So that is the reason we have configured that Redux Thunk in our store by using apply middleware. Whenever we are using an apply middleware with a Thunk, then our store have the capability to use all the facilities given by Thunk. The facility given by Thunk is, whenever you are using a function to dispatch, then you can use a dispatch event inside the another function, and then you can use this dispatch for dispatching any of the action. So here we are dispatching request as well as success and a failure case. So this is how we are trying to use asynchronous data. How I can say asynchronous? Axios is an asynchronous call which is having a promise based, and that is the reason we are able to handle by using our Thunk. But here one problem which I am facing is, this get API call is restricted for this particular connect. I don't want to do that. For that sake, let me cut this and go to your folder structure. Let me create one more folder called as services. So all my API calls I'll try to write inside this service by using one other file called as list.service.ts. It's up to you whether you want to maintain inside the connect itself, but I want to make it more segregated. So that is the reason I'm making it as a service file and I'm exporting from here, and let me use all import statements which are required for this file and save this. Let me go to the connect and let me remove unwanted imports and just go here and import this from your service file. If you can see here, I'm importing from the service file, so that all the files will be in a modular structure and you can use n number of times if you want. So this list service can be used anywhere whenever it is required. So Here we have created this type of structure, something like connect, pages, redux and services. Whenever you want to write some service, go here and write the service. Whenever you want to write some reducer, go here inside the redux and create your reducer. And whenever you want to create a page, you can go and create the page. And if you want to have a separate components, you can create your separate components inside the src. So this is about your redux thunk by using connect and redux. But even without using a connect, we can use Redux Thunk by using a latest hooks concept, that is nothing but use selector as well as use dispatch. So we will see about the use selector and use dispatch in the further videos. If you want to learn about React, please stay tuned and hit on the subscribe as well as bell icon, so that once I upload, you can just get the notification where you can quickly see the videos and the topics in a better fashion. And also I want to let you know, I am providing a GitHub link in the below description. Just go through that so that you will be getting this particular code. Just clone it and run it. You can see the output. And also I want to let you know that we have Angular videos from end to end in my playlist. If you have any questions, please comment below. And if something required from your side, please let me know so that I'll try to do a video. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.